last. I think the only thing we can do is look at past bear markets. At the same time, keep an asterisk near this one because it's different from the last ones, meaning the Fed is obviously tightening aggressively. Inflation is above 2%, much above. But since Bitcoin's been around, it's really been 2% or under inflation, at least reported. So you have these different things. But really, if you look at past cycles, it's been about 12 to 18 months that it takes for it to kind of bottom out. And then you kind of see what you really start to look for. And you can see here, so we had this initial drop, then a lot of chop. And by the way, for me, this is kind of where I think we are in Bitcoin. So this is 2017. My guess is we're kind of right in this area here, right? We just bottomed out. We're going to kind of do this. And then I think you might just get that one last dip, which will be the bottom level. This will kind of flush people out, that final flush that'll occur. But really what you can see here is you traded sideways for a long period of time before that last flush. And then it was a beautiful rounded bottom. And again, there's not going to be anything you're going to be able to find that's going to be like, aha, this is 100% a bottom. But it's more just, again, saying, okay, we have a rounded bottom. And then you start seeing, okay, once you start taking out some of these former levels, like to me, that would be something that I would watch, is this was a very, very keen level. Once we got above there, notice how Bitcoin really got some serious upside action. Now, again, did we come back and retest it later on? Absolutely. Right here, you retested it, but it quickly recovered again and got back above that level. But again, the things like rounded bottoms, cup and handle patterns, little things like that, and taking out former support that are now resistance levels, those would be things that I would look for when it finally bottoms out. Plus the emotional kind of capitulatory, free, panic. Oh my goodness, is Bitcoin going to survive type mentality?
That's great. I think it's difficult for me. I don't think it's even technically possible for me to share my charts. I will touch on a few concepts just to get your idea, Gareth. So we use some different moving averages that have called the bottoms previously. We use those same ones in 2018 to call the bottom when everyone said we're crazy. And those ones are sounding now.
Interesting.
And that's where I'm coming from, is like, hey, these same charts that I used in 2018 are sounding. But then we've got that emotional part where you talked about earlier. Hey, we haven't had that flush out. Hey, there should be way more coins that are dying. Hey, there should be way more companies that are going bankrupt. This should be worse. We've got the Fed, we've got interest rate. This should be worse. But then the charts are saying, hey, Steve, these same ones you used in 2018 are sounding the same signal. So what would you say to that? And then one chart in particular, you mentioned the RSI earlier. The monthly RSI has reached a pretty critical level of just about 43, which it's the lowest in history. And the previous two bottoms were just at about 44 that marked the bottom. So I would love to get your insight on those topics.
Yeah, so I think you have to pay attention to the signals you're seeing. Is I think any trader pays attention to the technicals, right? So if you're getting those same signals, then in the very least it's giving you bullish signals. And I think knowing you'll monitor those signals, and if they start to shift, then you'll be on point and be able to react. But I think you're doing the right thing, which is following those signals. Like I said, I mean, me starting to inch in my hodl position, that's also something that you want to pay attention to as well, where I'm clearly saying that, yes, we haven't seen the flush out, but you also have to say, well, slowly Bitcoin is being adopted more and more. So maybe that's why we don't see that full flush out on crypto, is that, more and more people globally are opening, wallets and getting involved. I think that regulation is going to be something that's absolutely key and a very big positive. I saw Gary Gensler on CNBC today. He was talking about trying to protect investors and how crazy it is. And I think that's right. I mean, a year or two ago, people were like, oh, don't let the SEC get close to crypto. But I think after this, when people see that they may lose all their money that was in Celsius or Three Arrows Capital or all the other things like that, I mean, there needs to be some sort of kind of safety measures put in where you can't have some shady stuff going in. And again, with those regulations, if we get those, that would actually, I think, be a very big positive, because there's a lot of big money, like pension funds and all these other things, that they won't go near crypto until there's a framework of safety, including older Americans. I think younger Americans and the younger people globally are more into the risk taking. They've grown up with crypto more so. But I mean, there's trillions of dollars of retirees, and they're just not going to take that risk. And so if you can give them that framework where they say, okay, well, my money's, like FDIC insurance, it's guaranteed up to this amount. All right, now I feel a little bit safer in case there's fraud in one of these cryptocurrencies. So I think that, again, I think what you're seeing is absolutely valid, and it very well could be the case. I'm taking it from a little bit of the other perspective of like the .com era, where I still think there could be one, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, and I think that's the key. The bottoms, as you know, Gareth, they're sexy. Everybody wants to try to time the bottom with the perfect investment of their whole life. But the reality is we're so oversold. We're one of the most oversold points in Bitcoin's entire history. Like, close your eyes and buy some Bitcoin for the future, really. And don't try to time the bottom with the exact perfect number. I think, like you mentioned earlier, it's going to be laughable. But it makes for fun banter back and forth to say, hey, what's your opinion? Hey, what's your opinion? But I think that you nailed it. Take your positions now at these levels. If we go lower, take more positions. Nobody in the world knows where Bitcoin is going. We have our ideas for the charts. You have your ideas. But the reality is, buy Bitcoin now for the future if you're long term. And I think what's important is to focus on the facts and the charts as you do. And it's going to be interesting. I want to do a follow-up in some time, and we'll see how the charts progress, because you, much like us, if facts in the charts change, we're going to change our whole stance. We just need facts in the charts.
I think that's the most important thing that, Steve, that's important to mention, is that a good trader is able to recognize when things shift. A lot of people out there are like, oh, you said this, but now you're saying this. And it's not that you're like a fair weather friend. It's that we literally every day get a new daily candle on the chart, and it's another piece to the puzzle. And yesterday it might have looked like a lion. Maybe today it looks like a jaguar, or something else. And the traders that don't adjust, they're the ones that lose all their money. And so you have to be able to adjust. So just like that, so just to show you here on my chart, I know I have lots of lines from when we were discussing earlier, but there is a point where I would actually join your crowd and say, okay, I think a low is in. So see this longer term trend line here. If we were to really establish ourselves above that and hold it, let's say for a week or two, and kind of consolidate, that's a longer term trend line where for me, I'd start to say, okay, now we've taken that out. Now we're holding it. We just didn't pierce it by a day or two, but we're actually staying above it. That would make me into more of that side of saying, okay, this might have been the low at that point. And the beauty of this is it's a down-sloping trend line, so it's going lower and lower every day. So in 2 months, this will be at 28,000, and in 4 months at 26, So the longer we stay here, the lower that bogey level gets for being able to shift the perspective of saying, okay, now for me at least, we're in this new bull market potentially with a lot of upside near term versus another dip to the downside.